Thank you all for bearing with us during the setup, and I always grab my phone to use it as a timer because time moves pretty fast when doing talks like these. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for having me this evening. Thank you, Mr. Rayland, for having me here. My name is Cheeraz Gorman, as been stated. I am the founder and executive director of the nonprofit Sibling Support Network, which you will see up on the screen. My nonprofit organization is that I work with people who have lost their siblings to a violent crime. So as you can imagine, when I was contacted to speak about nonviolence, I leaped at the opportunity to do so. As the founder and executive director of Sibling Support Network, a nonprofit designed to support people who have lost blood-related or fictive kin siblings to a violent crime, there's a particular investment I have on the topic of nonviolence. And for you all not familiar with the terminology fictive kinship, fictive kinship is a term used in anthropology that we describe chosen family through. So depending on what cultural background you come from, you might refer to people as play brothers or play sisters along those lines. So that's where the term fictive kinship comes from. So I want to talk about a few misconceptions that people have when they hear the term death by violent crime. One of the automatic assumptions is that we think of gun violence. And violent crime is anything from vehicular manslaughter to actually death by asphyxiation, to stabbing deaths, etc. And the other misconception that we have is that when we hear gun violence, we don't tend to think of domestic or intimate partner violence. Sadly enough, in the city of St. Louis and surrounding counties, domestic violence and intimate partner violence is the #1 crime. So whenever we hear the news of someone transitioning from a violent crime, in particular, and most specifically, gun violence, sadly enough, that could be domestic violence or intimate partner violence. And just to give you a little background and the reason why I started Sibling Support Network, my youngest brother, John, at the age of 27 years old, was murdered here in the city of St. Louis, August 14th of 2013. In the particular case of his murder, he was defending a young woman in the neighborhood who had been getting abused by her ex since 2008. So my brother, as our father said, one died so we could live, because a lot of his friends survived that attack. The young woman also survived the attack as well as her children. However, I did lose my brother in that incident, which sparked me to start Sibling Support Network. And the other thing that we think about a lot, we don't think about a lot, is that we think that people had engaged in a particular activity that has warranted their death, especially if we hear that it was death by a violent crime. And the last thing is that sometimes we feel as though that people are not impacted, namely the siblings. How many times has someone heard of someone passing away and we immediately just think about the parents? Or we think about the spouse? Or we think about the children? And for me, it was important for me to take a stop, a hard stop actually, and to acknowledge my pain and to start looking at the pain of others who were in my situation, people who have lost our blood-related, our fictive kin siblings to a violent crime. And oftentimes when people commit acts of violence, we don't think about the impacts of poverty, of intergenerational poverty, and the desperation that sets up, that leads to the act of a violent crime. We don't think about the oppressive states that people are living in many of our communities that drive them to engage in such crime and to create such pain in the world. So while I do not identify as Buddhist, the idea of moving from ignorance to enlightenment in a moment, an idea I became familiar with while spending time at Soho Gaikai International when I lived in Chicago. The idea is one that still impacts me to this day. All of which I've talked about previously requires us to move from ignorance to enlightenment and to not lean on our own biases and misinformation or the misconceptions. When I think about the impact of various forms of violence that express themselves throughout our communities, from policy to economic depression, to the psychological and physical harms of environmental racism and violence, to the manifestation of domestic and intimate partner violence and community violence, there's one emotion that continues to rise to the surface for me, and that is fear. The wealth gap measures the difference between the median wealth of Black versus median wealth of whites. Almost all studies calculate wealth by adding up total assets, which is cash, retirement, accounts, homes, etc., then subtracting liabilities, which is credit card debt, student loans, mortgage, etc. The resulting figure is our net worth. And I wanted to set that up because in a September 18, 2017 New York Times article titled, "Whites Have Huge Wealth Edge Over Blacks, but Don't Know It," it is stated, Black families in America earn just $57.30 for every 100 in income earned by white families. According to the Census Bureau current population survey, for every $100 in white family wealth, Black families hold just $5.04. What system is in place that allows for such violence and wealth disparities in this country? The top 1% of families took home an average of 26.3 times as much income as the bottom 99% in 2015. And this is according to a new paper released by the Economic Policy Institute, a nonpartisan think tank out of Washington, D.C. For me, fear has no place in the heart that seeks change, for fear is the great deceiver. Fear clouds our judgment, creating a dense forest of misconception, misunderstanding, and misinterpretations that places a lifetime of work before us that resembles pulling weeds. Fear tells us that the world is unsafe and feeds our minds with images, messages, and dogma to assert this point. Also, another tidbit of information about myself is that this year I am a 20-year veteran of the advertising industry, where I have worked as a creative director, copywriter, and brand strategist. And for me, the conflict was such a great thing of being in that industry. However, one of the things surprised me about that, and I will just give you a little bit of tidbit history fact. I was the first Black woman in the history of Wyden and Kennedy to be in the creative department, and I was hired in 2009. I was the only Black woman in the creative department during my tenure there. At one point in the ad industry, women only made up 3% of creative upper management. Black women only made up 0.001% of creative upper management. In the year of 2010, there were only 3 Black women on the entire West Coast who were copywriters who were of creative director level. Myself in Portland, Oregon, another woman in Oakland, California, and another woman in Los Angeles. As so beautifully put by the artist Kara Walker in reference to the silhouette, The silhouette says a lot with very little information, but that's also what the stereotype does. Fear grants us permission to withdraw, withhold, assume, conjure, and accuse. It orchestrates our experiences in a type of self-fulfilling prophecy kind of way. Oftentimes, if not most of the time, justifies the lies we've told ourselves about places and people, and disables the ability for us to stand in our own power. With jelly-like legs, we begin to tread through life unsure of ourselves. Empathy gets replaced with apathy. Isolation becomes the rule of the day because we can always be right in our own head and amongst people who make us feel comfortable. We can always be safe from a harm we have inflicted within our own imagination because at any moment we can change those imaginings. Fear is subjective and harmful. Better yet, fear is violence. If we are to be honest about the conditions of today in St. Louis City, surrounding counties, and the Metro East area, I ask us to go beyond the surface optics to examine the root of what plagues us and our communities and how it all began. In 1917, in East St. Louis, we had the East St. Louis riots, which the East St. Louis riots actually started off as a labor riot. The white residents of East St. Louis were angered at the Great Migration and the migration of Black workers coming up from the South and taking jobs. So